Money is not paper, money is trust. It is a shared hallucination. You work for 40 hours a week in exchange for colored slips of cotton rag paper because you trust that a shopkeeper will trade them for bread. You trust that the government promises the paper is worth something. But what happens when a government, a rival empire, decides to hack that trust? In 1942, the Bank of England faced a threat more dangerous than the Blitz. It wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a V-2 rocket. It was a 5-pound note. To the naked eye, it was perfect. It had the watermark of Britannia. It had the correct serial number. It felt crisp and expensive to the touch. Even the chief cashier of the Bank of England couldn't tell the difference. But it wasn't printed in London. It was printed in a concentration camp in Germany. This is the story of Operation Bernhard, the Nazi plot to flood the British economy with so much fake cash that the pound would become worthless. It is the story of the only time in history that a central bank was forced to do the unthinkable, admit defeat, withdraw its own currency, and burn it. To understand the crime, you must understand the desperation. By 1942, the war was turning. The Blitz had failed to break the British spirit. The Royal Air Force was holding the skies. Germany needed a new weapon, one that could bypass the military and strike directly at the heart of the British Empire. The plan came from the SS. They realized that an economy is fragile. If they could drop millions of fake pounds onto British streets, literally raining money from the sky, people would pick it up. They would spend it. Prices would skyrocket. Inflation would destroy the savings of every family in England. The economy would collapse from the inside out. They called it Operation Bernhard. But there was a problem. The British pound was the most sophisticated, secure, and difficult to forge currency in the world. It wasn't just paper. It was a work of art designed to be impossible to copy. To pull this off, the Nazis didn't need soldiers. They needed artists. Major Bernhard Kruger, the SS officer in charge, went to the concentration camps. He wasn't looking for strong laborers. He was looking for a specific skill set. He pulled 142 men from the lines at Sachsenhausen. They were Jewish prisoners, but in their former lives, they were master engravers, typography experts, bankers, and artists. Kruger made them an offer that was both a lifeline and a death sentence. Build me the perfect British pound, and you will live. Fail, and you will die. They were moved to Block 19, a secret, isolated section of the camp. They were given better food, radio privileges, and warm beds, but the windows were painted white. They were ghosts. The challenge they faced was technical madness. First, the paper. British banknotes were not made from wood pulp. They were made from pure linen rags. The Nazis tried to replicate it, but their paper glowed under ultraviolet light. The British paper was dull. They realized the British used dirty, low-quality rags from factories. So, the Nazis began importing dirty rags from Turkey to match the chemical composition perfectly. Second, the watermark. The image of Britannia on the 5-pound note was complex. The prisoners hand-carved the mesh to create the watermark, an agonizing process where a single millimeter of error meant execution. Third, the code. The Bank of England used a complex algorithm to generate serial numbers. If the Nazis printed a note with a number that didn't exist in the bank's ledgers, the fraud would be detected immediately. For months, the prisoners worked. They stalled when they could, trying to sabotage the effort without getting caught. But eventually, the SS pressure became too great. They produced the perfect note. The result was terrifying. Kruger took a stack of these forged notes to a bank in Switzerland, neutral ground. He asked the Swiss bankers to verify them. The Swiss examined the paper, the ink, the watermark. They told Kruger, These are genuine. He pushed further. He asked them to send the notes to the Bank of England in London for verification. The Bank of England replied by letter, confirming the serial numbers were valid. The Nazis had done it. They had hacked the pound. By 1943, the Sachsenhausen presses were running 24 hours a day. They were printing 600,000 notes a month in total. They printed 134 million pounds, adjusted for inflation. That is billions of dollars. It was enough to cover the entire British money supply multiple times over. But the plan changed. The Luftwaffe didn't have enough planes to drop the money over London anymore. So, the SS decided to use the money for something else. They used it to buy the war. They used the fake pounds to pay spies. The famous spy Cicero, who stole secrets from the British ambassador, was paid £300,000 in Operation Bernhard notes. He thought he was a rich man. He was actually holding paper scraps. They used it to buy supplies on the black market. They bought food, gold, and weapons from neutral countries, using money that didn't exist. The sheer volume of cash eventually broke the dam. A bank clerk in Tangiers, Morocco, was counting a stack of pounds. He paused. He recorded a serial number in his ledger. Then, he stopped. He had recorded that exact same serial number a week earlier. From a different client, 2 notes, 1 number, both looked perfect. The report made its way to London. The Bank of England checked their vaults. They realized they had a duplicate note in their own reserve. Panic set in. They didn't know how many were out there. Was it a few thousand, a few million? The Bank of England realized they had lost control of their own currency. If they announced the problem, public trust would vanish and the economy would crash. Exactly what Hitler wanted. So, they kept it a secret, but they made a drastic decision. They stopped issuing high-value notes. They effectively burned the liquidity of the empire. They had to design a new £5 note with a metal security thread, the blue fiver, and withdraw the old white notes from circulation. The Nazis had forced the British Empire to cancel its own cash. As the war ended in 1945, the SS panicked. They couldn't be caught with the evidence of the greatest counterfeiting operation in history. They marched the prisoners of Block 19 to Lake Toplitz, deep in the Austrian Alps. They loaded the printing plates, the ledgers, and millions of pounds of fake cash into boxes and sank them to the bottom of the lake. The prisoners were ordered to be executed. But in a twist of fate, the American army arrived hours before the execution order could be carried out. The ghosts of Block 19 walked free. For decades, the locals around Lake Toplitz told stories of Nazi gold in the water. In 1959, divers went down. They didn't find gold. They found boxes of wet, rotting paper. Millions of pounds, the remnants of a weapon that almost worked. Operation Bernhard failed to win the war, but it succeeded in proving a terrifying point. We like to think that value is real, that a gold coin or a dollar bill has intrinsic worth. But the prisoners of Sachsenhausen proved that value is just a manufacturing process. If you can replicate the paper, you can steal the trust. The Bank of England survived, but they learned the lesson that every wealth archivist knows. The only difference between a criminal and a central bank is who holds the ledger. They burned the notes. They buried the plates. But the question remains, if a fake is so perfect that even the bank can't tell the difference, is it really a fake, or is it just unauthorized money?